The first battle lasted 18 hours and changed everything both species thought they knew about warfare. Captain Ben Murphy watched from the bridge of the UES Washington as human and Zephyrian forces worked together against an enemy that defied all logic. The Devourers fought like no enemy humanity had ever faced. Their ships moved through space as if the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. They could phase in and out of reality, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. But the new hybrid weapons created by human and Zephyrian scientists were working. When the UES Texas fired its modified siege cannons, the energy beams wrapped with Zephyrian crystal resonance actually hurt the Devourer ships. Dark fluid leaked from their wounds, and their movements became slower and more predictable. Commander Susan Wells led her boarding party through the nightmare interior of a wounded Devourer ship. The inside was nothing like a normal spacecraft. Instead of corridors and rooms, there were organic tunnels that pulsed with alien life. The walls were covered with a substance that looked like both metal and flesh. "Stay together," Wells ordered her team as they moved deeper into the ship. "These things are alive, and they know we're here." The boarding teams carried weapons that combined human firepower with Zephyrian energy manipulation. When they fired, the beams created small tears in reality itself, allowing them to damage creatures that existed in multiple dimensions. Private Jake Collins, a young Marine from Texas, was the first human to kill a Devourer crew member. The creature was unlike anything in human nightmares, a being that seemed to be part machine, part organic matter, and part pure energy. When Collins' weapon struck it, the creature screamed in frequencies that hurt to hear, then dissolved into nothing. "They can die," Collins reported to his team. "Whatever they are, they can die." Back on the Washington, Admiral Murphy was learning hard lessons about fighting an enemy that had conquered galaxies. The Devourers were not just powerful, they were smart. They learned from each battle and adapted their tactics. "They're studying us," Dr. Rachel Kim reported from her laboratory. "Each time we use a tactic, they develop a counter for it. We need to stay one step ahead of them." General Sam Price, who had arrived with the main fleet, took command of the overall military strategy. Price was a thin man with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He had spent 40 years studying warfare and had never lost a campaign. "The key is not to fight them where they're strong," Price explained to the assembled commanders. "These creatures have been fighting for millions of years. They know every trick in the book except one: human unpredictability." Price's strategy was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Instead of trying to defend everything at once, he abandoned some positions to concentrate force at key points. He used human ships as decoys, sacrificing them to draw Devourer forces into traps. The Zephyrians were horrified by human tactics. Elder Zara spoke to Captain Jake Morrison about her concerns. "Your people fight with such violence," she said, her musical voice filled with sadness. "You sacrifice your own ships and people as if they were tools to be used and discarded." Jake tried to explain. "We don't like it either, but sometimes sacrifice is necessary to save lives. The crew of those ships knew the risks when they volunteered." "Volunteered?" Elder Zara asked. "You mean they chose to die?" "They chose to fight for something bigger than themselves," Jake corrected. "That's what humans do." The war stretched on for months. The Devourers had more ships than the humans had expected, and they called for reinforcements from other parts of the galaxy. Soon the human fleet was facing over 200 enemy vessels. Captain Tony Clark of the UES Texas developed new tactics for fighting the massive Devourer ships. Instead of trying to destroy them completely, his ships would target specific parts of their anatomy. By hitting their energy-feeding organs, human forces could force the creatures to retreat to find new sources of power. "Think of them as giant space sharks," Clark explained to his crew. "We can't kill a shark by punching it, but we can make it decide we're not worth the trouble." Colonel Matt Stevens expanded the boarding operations. Human Marines, now equipped with hybrid armor that combined human engineering with Zephyrian crystal technology, could survive inside Devourer ships for extended periods. They planted bombs in vital organs and sabotaged the creature's ability to feed. The Zephyrians learned human concepts they had never needed before. They learned about strategic thinking, about acceptable losses, and about the willingness to destroy in order to preserve. Some of them struggled with these ideas, but others adapted quickly. Young Zephyrian scientist Nara worked closely with Dr. Rachel Kim to understand Devourer biology. Her crystal skin had taken on a darker hue from stress, but her mind was sharp. The devourers are not individuals, Nara explained to the human scientists. They are parts of a larger organism. Each ship is like a cell in a body. If we can find the brain of this organism, we might be able to stop them all at once. Dr. Nancy Ford, a biologist from Earth, had been studying the samples collected from destroyed devourer ships. She made a discovery that changed the entire war. They're not really alive, she announced during a science meeting. They're sustained by an external energy source. Cut off that source and they'll return to dormancy. The search for the source of devourer power became the focus of the war effort. Captain Laura White of the UES Roosevelt led deep reconnaissance missions into unexplored space. Her stealth ships followed fleeing devourer vessels back toward their home base. What they found was terrifying. In the empty space between galaxies, the devourers had built a massive construct that existed partially outside normal reality. The structure was larger than most solar systems and pulsed with dark energy. It's their command center, White reported to Admiral Murphy. Every devourer in the galaxy is connected to that thing. If we can destroy it, we can end this war. But the construct was protected by thousands of devourer ships and surrounded by space that didn't follow normal physical laws. Any attack would be suicide. General Price studied the intelligence reports and began planning the most desperate mission in human history. A small strike force would have to penetrate to the heart of the construct and destroy it from within. The mission would require volunteers who knew they would not be coming home. Captain Jason Hill of the UES Defiance volunteered to lead the mission. Hill was a quiet man with brown hair and steady hands. He had commanded escort ships for most of his career and had never sought glory. But he understood the importance of the mission. We need people who can improvise, Hill explained to his volunteer crew. The construct exists in multiple dimensions. Our equipment will probably fail. We'll have to rely on human ingenuity and Zephyrian adaptability. The strike force included 50 humans and 20 Zephyrians who had learned human fighting techniques. They flew in ships modified with the best technology both species could provide. Elder Zara came to see the strike force off. She had learned much about humans during the long war. You are a strange people, she told Captain Hill. You fight with such determination for beings you barely know. Why do you do this? Hill thought about the question for a moment. Because when someone calls for help, we answer. That's just who we are. The Defiance and its escort ships began their journey into the void between galaxies. Behind them, the combined human and Zephyrian fleet prepared for the final battle. They would hold the line while the strike force attempted the impossible. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty and watched the strike force disappear into hyperspace. The war had been going on for over a year now. Both sides had learned much about each other and both had paid a heavy price. But humans had proven something important. They had shown that the Devourers could be fought and beaten. More importantly, they had shown that when intelligent species worked together, they could overcome any challenge. The final phase of the war was about to begin. In the empty space between galaxies, a small group of humans and Zephyrians would attempt to destroy an enemy that had terrorized the universe for millions of years. Success would mean freedom for countless civilizations. Failure would mean the end of everything. But Captain Hill and his crew were not thinking about failure. They were thinking about the job that needed to be done and the people counting on them to do it. That was the human way, and it had brought them this far. Now it would have to take them the rest of the way. Dr. Kevin Hayes sat in the crystal chamber of the third crystal city, surrounded by Zephyrian historians and scientists. The alien beings were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished glass. Their large eyes glowed with soft blue light, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like music. For the past day, Kevin had been learning about the Devourers from the Zephyrian records. The ancient archives told a terrifying story that stretched back millions of years. The Devourers are not like other life forms, explained historian Kelth, an elderly Zephyrian whose crystalline skin had turned silver with age. They are beings that exist between life and death, between matter and energy. They consume not just physical things, but the very essence of existence itself. Kevin nodded as he took notes on his computer. And they've done this before? Many times, Kelth replied. Every few million years they wake from their sleep and sweep across the galaxy. They consume entire civilizations, then return to their sleeping place in the void between galaxies. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was busy with a different task, The Liberty's quantum communication system had finally managed to send a message back to Earth. The message was simple but urgent. Found alien civilization under attack by cosmic threat. Request immediate military assistance. The response from Earth came faster than anyone expected. Admiral Jack Collins, commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet, sent back a message that made Jake's heart race. Help is coming. Admiral Karen Thompson is mobilizing the entire fleet. Hold position and gather intelligence. Back on Earth, the news of first contact and the alien threat caused chaos in the government. President Karen Thompson called an emergency meeting of the military leadership. How long until our ships can reach them? She asked Admiral Collins. The UES Washington can be there in 4 days, Collins replied. Captain Ben Murphy is already preparing his crew for immediate departure. The rest of the fleet will follow as quickly as possible. President Thompson nodded. Do we have any idea what we're facing? Captain Morrison's reports describe creatures unlike anything we've ever encountered, Collins said. They seem to be part machine, part living organism. Our standard weapons may not be effective. Then we'll use non-standard weapons, Thompson said firmly. Authorize the deployment of Project Thunderstrike. Admiral Collins looked surprised. Project Thunderstrike was humanity's most secret weapons program. Ma'am, are you sure? Those weapons have never been tested in actual combat. If not now, when? Thompson replied. Our people are out there fighting for their lives and the lives of an entire alien civilization. We give them every tool we have. Back in the Zephyrian system, Jake was learning more about his new allies. The Zephyrians were an ancient and wise people, but they were completely unprepared for war. Their technology was based on harmony and cooperation with natural forces. The idea of using technology to destroy had never occurred to them. Elder Zara showed Jake through their crystal cities. The structures were beautiful beyond anything humans had built. They floated in space without any visible means of support, powered by the energy of the gas giant's magnetic field. Your cities are incredible, Jake said as they walked through a corridor made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. Thank you, Elder Zara replied, but I fear their beauty will not save them from the devourers. Already 2 of our 7 cities have been completely consumed. Jake stopped walking. Consumed? What do you mean? The devourers do not just destroy, Elder Zara explained. They absorb everything into themselves. The crystal, the energy, even the space where the cities existed, all of it becomes part of them. It is as if those places never existed at all. This news troubled Jake greatly. If the devourers could literally erase things from existence, how could they be stopped? He was still thinking about this problem when Amy's voice came through his communicator. Captain, we're receiving a message from Earth. The cavalry is coming. Jake smiled for the first time in days. How many ships? All of them, sir, Amy replied. The entire Earth defense fleet is heading our way. 4 days later, the space around the Zephyrian system began to fill with human warships. The UES Washington arrived first, followed by dozens of other vessels. Jake had never been so happy to see the familiar shapes of human spacecraft. Captain Ben Murphy of the Washington was a veteran commander with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in the colonial wars and the pirate conflicts of the outer systems, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw when his ship arrived. My God, Morrison, Murphy said during their first communication. What are those things? The enemy, Jake replied simply. They call themselves devourers, and they're everything the reports said and worse. Murphy studied the tactical displays showing the devourer ships. How many did you say there were? 57 at last count, Jake answered. And they're not just ships, they're living creatures that have merged with their technology. Our normal weapons barely scratch them. The human fleet took up positions around the Zephyrian system. Along with the Washington came the carrier UES Roosevelt under Captain Laura White, the siege ship UES Texas under Captain Tony Clark, and dozens of smaller vessels. Colonel Matt Stevens led the ground forces aboard the troop transport ships. He was a tall, muscular man with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes. Stevens had fought on 20 different worlds and had never met an enemy he couldn't defeat. But he was honest enough to admit that the devourers worried him. Dr. Rachel Kim arrived on one of the science vessels. She was a small woman with short black hair and the brightest mind in human space. Her job was to study the devourers and find their weaknesses. Within hours of the fleet's arrival, Rachel had set up a laboratory aboard the Liberty and was working with the Zephyrian scientists. The combination of human ingenuity and Zephyrian knowledge was producing interesting results. The Devourer's main strength is also their weakness, Rachel explained to Jake and Murphy during a strategy meeting. They exist in multiple dimensions at once. Part of them is in our reality, part in other dimensions. That's why normal weapons don't work well against them. But your exploding power core worked, Murphy pointed out. Yes, because it created a multi-dimensional explosion, Rachel said. The key is to hit them in all dimensions at once. Captain Murphy nodded slowly. And how do we do that? Rachel smiled. Project Thunderstrike. The experimental weapons Earth sent us can create multi-dimensional effects. We just need to modify them based on what we've learned from the Zephyrians. The modification work took 2 days. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian technicians, combining human weapons technology with Zephyrian crystal energy manipulation. The results were weapons unlike anything either species had created alone. During this time, the Devourers continued their attack on the remaining Zephyrian cities. 3 more cities were consumed completely, leaving only 2 cities in the Zephyrian home planet. Elder Zara contacted Jake with desperation in her musical voice. Captain Morrison, we are running out of time. The Devourers will reach our home planet in less than 1 day. We know, Jake replied. But help is here now. We're going to make our stand. Colonel Stevens prepared his ground forces for a type of combat they had never attempted before. Using the new hybrid weapons, human soldiers would board Devourer ships and attack them from within. Commander Susan Wells led the first boarding team. She was a small but fierce woman who had never backed down from a fight. Her team was equipped with the new multi-dimensional weapons and armor enhanced with Zephyrian crystal technology. Remember, Stevens told his troops, these things exist in multiple dimensions. Trust your equipment and trust each other. We're going to show these ancient monsters what happens when they threaten our friends. The human fleet moved into attack formation. The Washington and Texas positioned themselves for the main assault, while the Roosevelt launched its fighters. Smaller ships spread out to protect the remaining Zephyrian cities. Jake stood on the bridge of the Liberty and looked at the combined human and Zephyrian force. It was a strange alliance. Peaceful crystal beings working with aggressive human warriors, but it was also powerful. All ships, this is Admiral Murphy, came the voice over the communication system. We came here to help our new friends. We're not leaving until every last Devourer is destroyed or driven away. Attack! The battle for the Zephyrian system was about to begin. Humanity had brought its full military might across the galaxy to protect a species they had only just met. Now they would find out if human weapons and determination could defeat an enemy that had terrorized the universe for millions of years. The Liberty shook as it dropped out of hyperspace into chaos. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his chair as the ship's sensors screamed warnings at them. The Zephyrian home system was a war zone. Through the main screen, Jake could see the enemy ships. The Devourers were massive creatures that looked more like living nightmares than spacecraft. Their hulls were black and seemed to absorb light itself. Strange organic growths covered their surfaces, pulsing with dark red energy. These ships were easily 10 times larger than the Liberty. My God, whispered Commander Paul Baker as he stared at the screen. What are those things? Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez worked frantically at her station. Captain, I'm reading over 50 Devourer ships in the system. They're attacking the Zephyrian cities on 3 different planets. Jake could see the Zephyrian cities under attack. They were beautiful structures made of crystal that floated in space around gas giant planets. The cities sparkled like jewels as they caught light from the system's twin suns. But now, dark beams from the Devourer ships were striking them and pieces of crystal were breaking away into space. Are we getting any communications from the Zephyrians? Jake asked. Amy nodded. Yes, sir. They're trying to talk to us. The translation is getting better now that we're closer. A new voice came through the ship's speakers. It sounded musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The translation computer changed the alien words into English. Unknown ship you came, the voice said. We did not believe anyone would answer our call. I am Elder Zara of the 3rd Crystal City. We are grateful you are here, but you must leave. The Devourers will destroy you as they are destroying us. Jake activated the communication system. Elder Zara, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Liberty. We came to help you. We're not leaving. There was silence for a moment. Then Elder Zara spoke again. Humans, we have never heard of your species. You traveled across the galaxy to help strangers? That's what we do, Jake said simply. Chief Engineer Lisa Carter's voice came over the ship's internal communication system. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from those Devourer ships. Whatever they're using for weapons, it's more powerful than anything we have. Jake watched as one of the Devourer ships fired at a Zephyrian city. The dark beam struck the crystal structure and began to dissolve it. The crystals didn't just break, they seemed to disappear as if the beam was eating them. Amy, can you put me in direct contact with their military? Jake asked. They don't have a military, Captain, Amy replied. The Zephyrians have been peaceful for thousands of years. They've never needed to fight anyone. Paul shook his head. No military? How do they defend themselves? They don't, came Elder Zara's voice through the speakers. We have never known war. The Devourers are the first enemy we have ever faced. We do not know how to fight them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Zephyrians were completely helpless against these monsters. They had beautiful technology and wisdom from thousands of years of peace, but they had no weapons and no knowledge of warfare. Elder Zara, we need to know everything about these Devourers, Jake said. How long have they been attacking? Where did they come from? They appeared 3 days ago, Elder Zara replied. Our historians say they are ancient creatures from the time before time. They sleep for millions of years, then wake to consume everything in their path. They eat the very substance of reality itself. Dr. Kevin Hayes, the ship's scientist, had been listening to the conversation. He stepped forward. Captain, if I could speak with their historians, we might learn something useful about these creatures. Jake nodded. Elder Zara, we're sending over our best scientist. Can your people share your historical records with us? Of course, Elder Zara said. But I do not understand how one small ship can help us. The Devourers have already consumed the outer planets of our system. They will reach our homeworld in less than 2 days. Jake looked at his crew. They were scared. Anyone with sense would be scared facing those monsters. But they were also determined. Humans had faced impossible odds before. We'll figure something out, Jake said. We always do. Suddenly, the ship's alarms began blaring. Amy's voice cut through the noise. Captain, 3 Devourer ships are heading our way. They've noticed us. On the main screen, Jake could see the enemy ships turning toward them. They moved unlike any ship he had ever seen. Instead of flying in straight lines, they seemed to flow through space like living creatures swimming through water. Lisa, give me everything the engines have, Jake called to engineering. Already on it, Captain, Lisa replied. But those ships are faster than us. Commander Susan Wells, who led the ship's small group of Marines, spoke up. Captain, what are your orders? Do we fight or run? Jake watched the Devourer ships getting closer. The Liberty's weapons were designed to fight human pirates, not cosmic monsters. But running away would mean abandoning the Zephyrians to certain death. We fight, Jake said. All weapons target the lead ship. The Liberty's laser cannons opened fire. The beam struck the lead Devourer ship, but instead of damaging it, the energy seemed to be absorbed into its dark hull. The creature didn't even slow down. Our weapons aren't working, Paul reported. It's like shooting at a black hole. The Devourer ships fired back. Dark beams of energy struck the Liberty's shields. The lights on the bridge flickered as the ship's power system struggled to absorb the attack. Shields down to 60%, Amy reported. If they hit us again like that, we're finished. Jake's mind raced. Normal weapons weren't working. They needed a new strategy, and they needed it fast. Lisa, can you overload one of our power cores? He asked. Captain, that would destroy half the ship, Lisa replied. Not if we ejected first, Jake said. Amy, can you calculate a trajectory to hit that lead ship? Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Yes, sir, but the timing has to be perfect. Do it, Jake ordered. Lisa prepared the power core for ejection while Amy calculated the trajectory. The Devourer ships kept firing, and the Liberty's shields continued to weaken. Now, Jake said. The Liberty ejected the overloaded power core directly into the path of the lead Devourer ship. A moment later, it exploded in a brilliant flash of light. When the light faded, the Devourer ship was still there, but it had stopped moving. Dark fluid leaked from cracks in its hull. We heard it, Paul said with amazement. It's not invincible. Elder Zara's voice came through the speakers again. How did you do that? Nothing has been able to harm the Devourers. We used our power core as a weapon, Jake explained. The explosion released pure energy in all directions. The Devourers can absorb directed energy attacks, but they can't handle an explosion that surrounds them. This is incredible, Elder Zara said. You have shown us that the Devourers can be fought. Perhaps there is hope after all. Jake looked at his crew. They had learned something important. The Devourers could be hurt, but the Liberty was damaged and there were still dozens of enemy ships in the system. Elder Zara, we need to meet with your people, Jake said. We need to share everything we know about fighting and warfare. And you need to share everything you know about these Devourers. Yes, Elder Zara agreed. Come to the third Crystal City. We will gather our wisest leaders to meet with you. As the Liberty headed toward the Zephyrian city, Jake couldn't help but smile. Humanity had just made first contact with an alien species under the worst possible circumstances. But they had also proven something important. The Devourers might be ancient and powerful, but they weren't invincible, and now, for the first time in millions of years, they were facing an enemy that knew how to fight back. Jake looked at the beautiful crystal cities of the Zephyrians and made a promise to himself. Humanity had answered the call for help across the stars. Now they were going to make sure that call was not in vain. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars through the main screen. The ship had been traveling through space for 8 months now. They were far from Earth, farther than any human ship had gone before. The Liberty was humanity's newest deep spaceship, built to explore the unknown parts of the galaxy. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and serious blue eyes. He had been in space for 15 years and had seen many strange things. But nothing had prepared him for what happened that day. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her station, monitoring the communication systems. She was young but very good at her job. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she checked for any signals from other ships or planets. Space was usually quiet in this part of the galaxy. Commander Paul Baker stood next to Jake. He was Jake's second in command and his best friend. They had served together for many years. Paul was shorter than Jake but very strong. He had black hair and green eyes that missed nothing. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. The crew of 200 people were going about their daily work. Some were sleeping, others were eating or working in different parts of the ship. Life on a deep spaceship was usually boring, but everyone knew they were making history. Suddenly, Amy's station began to beep loudly. She looked at her screen with surprise. Her eyes grew wide as she read the information. "Captain," she called out, "I'm getting a signal. But this is impossible." Jake walked over to her station. "What do you mean impossible?" "The signal is coming from outside our galaxy," Amy said. "Nothing can send a message that far." "The physics don't work that way," Paul joined them. "Are you sure about the location?" Amy checked her instruments again. "Yes, sir. The signal is coming from the space between galaxies. And Captain, it's not just any signal. It's a distress call." Jake felt his heart beat faster. A distress call from another galaxy meant there was intelligent life out there. It also meant that life was in trouble. "Can you translate it?" he asked. Amy worked on her computer. The Liberty had the best translation system humanity had ever built. It could learn new languages quickly by studying patterns and sounds. But this was different from anything they had tried before. Slowly, words began to appear on the screen. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "Help us," the message said. "Ancient evil has awakened. Our people are dying. We call to anyone who can hear this. Please, if there is anyone out there, help us." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stared at the screen. They were reading a cry for help from beings they had never met, in a place they had never been. "There's more," Amy said. She continued working on the translation. "They call themselves Zephyrians. They say something called the Devourers has come to their home. These Devourers are destroying everything." Jake looked at the star charts. The signal was coming from a place that should be empty space. But if there really were people there, people who needed help, what should he do? "Captain," Paul said quietly. "We're explorers, not soldiers. We don't have weapons for a real fight." Jake knew Paul was right. The Liberty was built for exploration. It had some small weapons for protection against space pirates, but nothing for a real war. If these Devourers were as dangerous as the message suggested, one human ship would not be much help. But Jake also knew something else. Humans had always helped each other when times were bad. It was part of what made them human. And now for the first time, they had found other intelligent life in the universe. That life was asking for help. Amy continued to work on the translation. More words appeared on the screen. "We have been peaceful for thousands of years," the message said. "We do not know how to fight. The Devourers consume everything. They eat planets, stars, entire solar systems. They are coming for us all. How long would it take to reach them? Jake asked. Amy did some quick math. At maximum speed, about 6 days. But Captain, we would be going farther than any human has ever gone. We would be completely alone out there. Jake thought about his crew. They had families back on Earth. They had signed up to explore space, not to fight an unknown enemy in a distant galaxy. He had no right to risk their lives for strangers. But then he thought about the message. Somewhere out there, people were dying. They had sent out a call for help to anyone who might hear it. Against all odds, humans had heard that call. Amy, send a message back, Jake said. Tell them we received their call. Tell them we're coming to help. Paul looked surprised. Jake, are you sure about this? We don't know what we're flying into. No, I'm not sure, Jake said. But those people are asking for help. If we were in their place, wouldn't we want someone to come? Amy sent the reply message. Then she looked up at Jake. Captain, I'm not sure they'll get our message. The distance is so great that it might not reach them in time. Then we better hurry, Jake said. He turned to the rest of the bridge crew. Set course for the signal source. Maximum speed. The Liberty's engines roared to life. The ship turned toward the empty space between galaxies and began to accelerate. They were heading into the unknown to help people they had never met. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars change as they picked up speed. He didn't know what they would find when they arrived. He didn't know if they would be able to help. He didn't even know if they would survive. But he knew one thing for certain. When someone called for help across the stars, humanity would answer that call. The journey to the Zephyrian home system would take 6 days. Jake spent those days preparing his crew for anything. They practiced emergency procedures and studied what little information they had about the distress call. As they traveled, Amy continued to receive more messages from the Zephyrians. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Devourers were getting closer to their home planet. Time was running out. On the 6th day, the Liberty dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system. What Jake saw through the main screen made his blood run cold. The system was under attack. Massive, dark ships filled the space around the Zephyrian planets. These ships were unlike anything in human records. They seemed to be alive, pulsing with dark energy as they attacked the beautiful crystal cities of the Zephyrians. Jake had brought his ship across the galaxy to answer a call for help. Now he was about to find out if humanity was strong enough to make a difference. Captain Jason Hill gripped his chair as the UES Defiant shook violently. The ship was deep inside the Devourer construct, fighting through defenses that challenged everything humans thought they knew about reality. The walls around them seemed to be made of crystallized darkness, and the corridors twisted in directions that shouldn't exist. Engineering report, Hill called out to his crew. Chief Engineer Mike Taylor's voice came back strained with effort. Captain, I'm holding the engines together with spare parts and prayer. The physics in here keep changing. What worked 5 minutes ago doesn't work now. The strike force had been inside the construct for 6 hours. Of the original 10 ships, only 3 remained functional. The Defiance, the escort ship Courage, and the Zephyrian vessel. Crystal Song were all that stood between the universe and eternal darkness. Commander Ellen, Davis led a boarding party through sections of the construct where human technology barely functioned. The Marines carried weapons that fired crystallized energy, a combination of human engineering and Zephyrian science that somehow worked in the twisted reality inside the structure. Davis to bridge, she reported through the communication system. We found something big. It looks like a control center, but it's protected by creatures I can't describe. Hill looked at the tactical display. Davis and her team were close to the center of the construct, where Dr. Alice Stone believed the main power source was located. But between them and their target were defenses that had defeated civilizations for millions of years. Dr. Stone worked frantically at her science station, trying to understand the construct's layout. She was a small woman with red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to find the exact location of the power core that sustained all Devourers across the galaxy. Captain, I think I've found it, Stone announced. The power source is directly below Davis's position, but it's in a pocket of space that exists in 7 dimensions at once. We'll need to coordinate our attack perfectly. Hill activated the ship's communication system to contact the other surviving ships. Courage, Crystal Song, this is Defiance. We're beginning the final assault. Are you ready? Captain Lisa Martinez of the Courage responded immediately. Ready, Jason. My people know what we're here to do. The musical voice of Elder Thyra from the Crystal Song came next. We are prepared, Captain Hill. Our crystal resonators are aligned with your human weapons. The plan was complex and dangerous. The three ships would have to attack the power core simultaneously from different dimensional angles. The timing had to be perfect, measured in nanoseconds. Any mistake would mean the failure of the mission and the death of countless billions across the galaxy. Commander Davis and her boarding party fought their way through the construct's guardians. The creatures they faced were unlike anything in human experience, beings of pure energy that could reshape matter with their thoughts. But human determination and Zephyrian wisdom proved stronger than ancient evil. We're at the control center, Davis reported. I can see the power core. It's huge, Captain, and it's beautiful and terrible at the same time. Hill could see the core through the ship's sensors. It was a sphere of swirling energy that seemed to contain entire universes within itself. This was the source of power that had sustained the Devourers for millions of years. All ships prepare to fire on my mark, Hill ordered. Stone, start the countdown. Dr. Stone's fingers flew over her controls. 30 seconds to optimal alignment, 25-20. In the Zephyrian home system, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty and watched the final battle between the combined fleet and the remaining Devourer forces. The enemy ships were fighting more desperately now, as if they sensed what was happening to their power source. 15 seconds, Stone continued. 10-5, mark! The three ships fired simultaneously. Human energy weapons wrapped in Zephyrian crystal resonance struck the power core from multiple dimensions at once. The core began to collapse, its swirling energy becoming unstable. Alarms screamed throughout the construct as the ancient structure began to tear itself apart. The power that had sustained the Devourers for eons was finally failing. It's working, Stone shouted over the noise. The core is collapsing. But Captain, the construct is coming apart around us. We need to get out of here. Hill looked at his instruments. The way they had come was already blocked by collapsing sections of the structure. The space around them was folding in on itself as the construct died. Davis, get your people back to the ship now, Hill ordered. Commander Davis and her Marines fought their way back through corridors that were dissolving behind them. They reached the Defiance just as the docking bay began to collapse. The three ships tried to escape, but the construct was imploding faster than they could fly. Captain Martinez's ship, the Courage, was caught in a dimensional fold and crushed out of existence. Elder Thyra's Crystal Song managed to reach the edge of the construct before it too was destroyed by the collapsing space. The Defiance was the last ship remaining. Hill pushed the engines beyond their limits, but he could see that they wouldn't make it out in time. Mike, can you give me more power? He called to engineering. I'm already giving you everything we have and more, Taylor replied. Captain, I don't think we're going to make it. Hill looked at his crew. They were young men and women who had volunteered for a mission they knew was suicide. They had succeeded in their goal, but the price would be their lives. It's been an honor serving with all of you, Hill said quietly. But Dr. Stone was still working at her station. Captain, wait. The power core collapse is creating a dimensional rift. If we can match our engine frequency to the rift's resonance, we might be able to ride the explosion out of here. It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success, but it was the only plan they had. Do it, Hill ordered. Stone adjusted the engine frequency while Taylor pushed the engines beyond their design limits. The Defiance caught the edge of the dimensional explosion and was thrown clear of the collapsing construct like a cork from a bottle. When they emerged into normal space, the strike force found themselves back in the Zephyrian system, where the combined fleet was watching in amazement as the Devourer ship suddenly stopped fighting. All across the galaxy, Devourers were falling into dormancy as their power source died. The ancient threat that had terrorized the universe for millions of years was finally defeated. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy ships go dark on his tactical display. After more than a year of desperate fighting, the war was over. All ships, this is Admiral Murphy, came the announcement over the fleet communication system. The mission was successful. The Devourers have been neutralized. We did it! Cheers erupted throughout the human fleet. On the Zephyrian ships, musical voices sang songs of celebration that had not been heard for 1,000 years. Elder Zara contacted Jake from the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld. Captain Morrison, how can we ever thank your people? You came across the galaxy to help strangers, and you have saved not just us but countless other civilizations. Jake smiled as he looked at the peaceful stars around them. That's what friends do for each other. In the months that followed, humans and Zephyrians worked together to rebuild what the war had destroyed. Human engineering combined with Zephyrian crystal technology created wonders that neither species could have achieved alone. The two civilizations formed an alliance that would reshape both their futures. Humans brought their adaptability, their willingness to fight against impossible odds, and their genius for finding solutions where none seemed to exist. The Zephyrians offered their wisdom, their elegant technology, and their deep understanding of the cosmic forces that governed the universe. Together, they began the work of exploring the galaxy and helping other civilizations that might face similar threats. They established joint colonies and research stations. They shared knowledge and culture in ways that enriched both species. A memorial was built in the joint human Zephyrian capital to honor those who had died in the war against the Devourers. The names of Captain Jason Hill and his crew were carved in crystal and steel, along with all the others who had given their lives for the freedom of the galaxy. But the most important memorial was not made of stone or metal. It was the friendship between two very different species who had learned to work together against a common enemy. Humans and Zephyrians proved that when intelligent beings put aside their differences and work toward a common goal, there is no challenge they cannot overcome. Years later, when other civilizations asked how humanity had managed to defeat an enemy that had conquered galaxies, the answer was simple. When the universe called for help across the stars, humanity had answered that call, and they had never fought alone. The galaxy was a safer place because two species had learned to trust each other, and in the vast darkness between the stars, other ancient evils slept a little less soundly, knowing that somewhere in the universe, there were beings who would stand against them. Humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors but as protectors, and the Zephyrians had learned that sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes from those willing to fight for what is right. The message that had started it all, a desperate plea for help sent across impossible distances, had been answered.